Hello friends, so today's video is going to be a if you like this, try that style of recommendations. What I try to do for all of these is find a book that is rather popular or maybe has been out for a little bit longer and pair that with a book that is underhyped, underrated, or just is a newer release that maybe isn't one that everybody's going out and immediately checking out. And it can be very difficult sometimes for new books to really get their footing and find their audience. And so hopefully in structuring the video this way, it'll help you determine if some of these newer releases are ones that you might want to check out. Kicking off the list, we're starting with a very popular series, which would be First Law by Joe Abercrombie. And I'm going to go ahead and pair that with Justice of Kings. This particular story is known for not having the strongest of plots, but being very character focused and having great character development. And there is sort of a plot that is beneath the surface throughout the trilogy, and you're kind of seeing it emerge as the trilogy comes to an end. But for the most part, I would not personally categorize this as plot driven. I would say it's very much about the characters. But regardless, the tone of these books, while it is grimdark and it does take place in a very bleak setting, there is a lot of humor to the story, and there's a lot of things that are very real and human. And the reason that Justice of Kings for me is one that I'm pairing it with is, one, I think that there is a huge emphasis on the characters. There is a plot, but I would say it's a hint convoluted and is not the thing that really pushed me forward. A lot of this story is philosophical musings. The setup is we follow a character who is the protege to Sir Conrad von Balt, this figure who is of a lot of importance and significance within their society. He is judge, jury, executioner, and detective all in one. And we see what are the consequences to one individual having that much power, and then if that person is very pure of intentions and follows the law, then how can it be also beneficial to have somebody have that much power? Is it more efficient? But you are going to see a lot of debating between the protege character Helena and her mentor von Balt. And you actually, I said before when I mentioned this one in a new releases wrap up, you actually get a courtroom scene in the book, which was incredibly gripping and engaging. But again, it's not really a plot-centered story. Similar to First Law, there is 100% a plot there, but it's not the thing that I would say is turning the page. And maybe you don't even really see the entire plot until you're finished with the story or finished with the series. With this one, I would say there's actually maybe a little more of a plot than there is in First Law, but I would say it's the characters and it's the questioning and the principles that come up and how people use power, because people are flawed. So how they use power is inherently flawed also, even when they do have good intentions, but they don't always have good intentions, or what happens when the best of intentions are met by people who are also powerful, maybe sometimes more powerful, and they're pushing back on it. And you just have a lot of these things come up. And I think there's somewhat of a sense of helplessness in both of these stories to the whims of the powerful, of the people who have the biggest say, who have the biggest influence. How much can you really do within that? Of the two, I think First Law is a little bit edgier. However, I think if you like one, you should definitely consider checking out the other. Completely switching gears, we have Spin the Dawn, and I'm pairing that one with A Magic Steeped in Poison. So with Spin the Dawn, I think a lot of people went into this expecting it to be a little different than it was. The setup for the story is we follow a character whose family has somewhat been fractured as a result of loss, as a result of war. And our main character is somebody who's trying to hold her family together. They run this little shop where she is a tailor. Her abilities are not ones necessarily that are supposed to be all that well learned by women, but she knows that she has to keep their family afloat. And so she does what she can, but she kind of does it in secret. And she doesn't really mind doing this because as long as her family can still have some sense of protection, some sense of love, some sense of just comfort, she's just going to do what she can. She doesn't need the credit. But then there's an opportunity where a tailor, there's going to be this competition to become the emperor's tailor. And so you're going to get these amazing tailors from all these different parts of the land come together to compete in a competition. And because she has not been taking credit for her work, they think it's one of her male family members, and they invite him, and she knows that they're not actually anywhere close to her level of skill. But if she can attain this position, then she kind of guarantees comfort and a decent life for her family. So she disguises herself as a boy and she goes in her family member's place. And so the story very much seems like it's going to be this competition setting. And it is for a portion of the story, but then it kind of shifts midway through into a traveling love story a little bit. And as a result, a lot of people who loved the first portion of the book and were wanting more of that were a little let down when that's not what the entire duology really was. But if you are the kind of person who picked this up and wanted more of the competition and wanted the setting to stay where it was for the initial first chunk of the story, then you will probably really like A Magic Steeped in Poison. The initial setup sounds rather similar. We have another competition setting, and it's for masters of the ancient and magical art of tea making. And magical as in literally there are some magical components to how they go about making the tea, the effects of the tea, the connection between the person who's made the tea and the person who's drinking the tea. And it's actually really unique and fascinating, and it's a kind of magic I've not really seen explored in a whole lot of stories. And so our character at the very opening of the story has lost her mother, another connection to the character in Spin the Dawn, and her sister is now ill. Another connection, because they have a sibling who needs some help. The father of the family is not really able to step in because they're grieving so much. Another connection. So this character, when this opportunity arises to try and go into this competition for these masters of tea making, they take this opportunity. One, they are also trying to figure out the reason that their mother has been killed, and they want to save their sister. There was some poison involved in what killed their mother, and then with her sister is now ill, and she's hoping that if she can win this competition, that she can use the favor that she will gain from the royalty to help save her sister. And the competition aspect is throughout the entire story. However, it goes a little bit beyond just being this competition setting. When our character gets to the palace, she is discovering that beneath all this prettiness is actually a lot of darkness. There's a lot of politicking, there's a lot of people that are scheming, and there's also a lot of class issues that arise that I wasn't actually expecting, and they're sort of woven into the story in a way that I thought was really well done. Even if you loved Spin the Dawn, and you loved the direction it took, and you loved that it became a magical traveling story, then I still think you should check this one out. And if you're somebody who checked this one out and you wanted more of the first part, I still say check this one out. It's a little more contained in its setting, and I quite enjoyed it. It took some twists and turns I wasn't really expecting, and I'm definitely very much looking forward to the sequel. Next up is a recommendation. I have kind of informally said, if you like this, maybe try this, but I'm now formally saying, if you like this, check this one out. So if you are a fan of Bloodsong by Anthony Ryan, then definitely check out Lancelot. In both of these books, we see these men at a very young age. We follow them as children, and we watch them grow into men. In Bloodsong, our character is taken to this school that I always describe as the Navy SEALs for kids. It's extremely brutal. Some of these kids die, but their goal is to become the most elite of soldiers. So they train them from the time that they're very young. And you see our main character, Valen, as he is growing up, as he's creating bonds with some of these other boys that he's going to the school with. And then as he's growing older, there are decisions being made by some people that, you know how in stories there's always this burden placed on nobility, because it's like, ugh, I have to decide if I do this route, these people will die, and if I do this route, these people will die. Both situations suck. Well, this story is kind of like, yeah, but what about the soldiers that have to carry out the orders that you give them? That's kind of like where Valen's life is headed, and he's sort of like, I wanted to use what I am capable of for good, but I don't know if I'll get a say. As a soldier, I'm supposed to kind of just do what I'm told, and I don't know if I'm really comfortable with that. So there's a lot of, I almost think this one would be a good one too if you like Justice of Kings. But either way, I really think that Bloodsong is going to be one that if you like it, you'll like Lancelot, because similarly, you follow a boy from the time he is young and you watch him become a man. You kind of see him struggling to determine what he feels is right. You're seeing him trying to find his place. And then you also see him interacting with people that have more power than him, more influence than him, and sort of being this right-hand man, the person that's going to carry out the orders that are given to him. So I think there's a lot of similarities between the characters, between the plots, but also the tone of the stories and the writing style, the way that both of these authors carry out the progression of these men's lives. I just feel that they're very similar. They're slower going. There's not a ton of action all the time, But sometimes it's just sitting with them as they are learning about weaponry, as they are talking to somebody who's older and wiser and learning from them, as they are seeing somebody that they grew to love start to become older. You're just seeing these things in their lives that I just find so captivating, and it just transports you to where they are. So I think not only are the plots similar, but I also just think the feeling that both of these authors are able to create is very similar. Last for today, we have If You Have Picked Up and Enjoyed Gallant by V.E. Schwab, which is actually the newer of these two books. Then I say give the book Vespertine a go. Gallant follows a character who she's currently growing up in this orphanage, and then this mysterious letter ends up in the orphanage saying, I am her uncle, and I have been looking for her, and now it's time for her to come home. And so then our character is going to go meet their family, and they arrive at this house, and things are not as they seem. And our main character she's a very interesting character to follow because very strange things will happen, and she kind of just takes them in, and she just observes. She has this journal that was left by her mother, and you see her mother sort of descending into madness by the end of her life, and our main character doesn't know if her mother is alive, if something happened to her, and she's hoping to gain answers by going to this house. Our main character actually doesn't have the ability to speak, so you see them communicating with a sign language. And the way that V.E. Schwab was able to create such an eerie atmosphere in this story was fantastic. I wouldn't say I was creeped out by the book, even though creepy things were happening. It was sort of sad. There was a sense of sadness throughout the story, and I almost feel like the creepiness of it was an accessory to the grim, sad feel. But Vespertine is a story that has similarly this sort of darker feel to it. We follow a character who is a part of this group of religious women who are able to look at these different orders of the dead. You actually have in the back of the book a hierarchy of spirits, and they talk about the different kinds, different levels of danger that various different parts of the dead and these spirits can have against mankind. And so our main character is somebody who is not at all bothered by looking at dead bodies, dissecting dead bodies, trying to figure out what caused their deaths, trying to ensure that she uses her knowledge to keep those spirits from harming the living. But then things kind of get flipped on their head when this place that our main character lives in is attacked, and in order to protect the people there, she has to rely on this relic that has a spirit within it that is now sort of gone into her own mind. So she's got this voice of this spirit where it's trying to influence her, it's trying to get her to do certain things, and she has to sort of push against it, but also look for the humanity in this spirit, and then also sort of use the power that is gained by it without letting it overwhelm her, overtake her. The main characters are both not your quote-unquote typical heroes. Both of these characters are ones that don't express themselves in the traditional ways, that maybe have some aspects of how they communicate that are a little bit different. So I really enjoyed both of them as our main perspectives, and in general I just think that the tone and the general aesthetic of both of these go really well together. That's it for some books that if you like one, maybe try checking out the other. Anyway, thanks so much for watching. I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day, and I'll see you all later. Bye.